a look at the different forms of spin pale for group DPS. We're going to look at them at 3 different paragon levels, 800, 1000, and 2k. And we're going to be comparing mostly Guardian set versus Crimson versus aughilds. So before we get started, I want to address a few things on my list here. First, I want to address Taeguk versus Powerful. You would think we might use Taeguk because we're strafing all the time. You can keep Taeguk up. Taeguk will give you more toughness, but Powerful will give you more damage, at least against elites, and elites are kind of what we care about. There is a spreadsheet. I'll see if I can link it in the description, but Powerful is more damage than Taeguk in a group because Taeguk is additive versus Powerful being multiplicative. The next thing I want to address is that Guardian uses Dexterity gems versus the other 2 builds, which use all-res gems. This is because the Guardian power that increases the Dexterity does affect the Dexterity gems. So instead of giving 280 Dexterity, it instead gives 560? That sounds right. It doubles it. And then the next thing I want to address is that aughilds has some attack speed rolls. This is because the strafe power works the same way as God DH, in that strafe has attack speed breakpoints where if you meet them, you can strafe a little bit faster. And then there's an internal cooldown on proccing the last non-channeled hatred spender. And so you want to try and match those up to some extent to where you don't have your proc ready but no strafe projectile hitting, or your strafe projectile hitting when there's no proc ready. There's going to be a video in the description that goes way more in depth into what exactly the breakpoints are you want to hit, but the 2 attack speed breakpoints do get you to a breakpoint with a dagger. It's not worth going for on Ingam because it has a slower base attack speed, and it's not worth going for in Guardian because you don't have the attack speed roll on your belt. So that's why only Crimson goes for the attack speed. Also, the attack speed only really matters when you're in a standing still scenario, which doesn't happen that often, but aughilds, I do have it set up with the attack speed rolls. And then the last thing I want to address is that you need your Ingam procs for your Vengeance uptime in Crimson. If you look here, we see we only have 67% uptime on Vengeance, which means there's a 9.74 second downtime. But every time you kill an elite, note that for an elite, you have to kill it and all of its minions in order to get Ingam to proc. But for a blue pack, you just have to kill the blue pack, and then you get Ingam to proc. It'll reset your Vengeance. This can proc even when you have Ingam already procced. Alright, so let's get into some numbers. I have the numbers here in my notepad. We're mainly focused on this number, this damage from impale number. We're not looking at the damage on your sheet, only the damage that impale does. And the damage that Guardian does at 800 paragon is this number, 3,177,000,000. Some other numbers you can read, I hope. And then we have Guardian, or sorry, this is Crimson. Then we have Crimson, which has this number at 800 paragon. And then we have aughilds, which has this number at 800 paragon. And so, if I've put in all my numbers correctly, which I think I have, these are the numbers that you get. And if you were to switch at 800 paragon from wearing Guardian to Crimson, you would get about 0.67% increase to damage, which is very small, marginal, not worth doing. And if you were to switch from Crimsons to aughilds, this is going to be true at basically every level. You'll get a 4.44% increase in damage to elites. Notably, you'll get less damage to the trash, but at the tier you're doing in group, you should be able to just annihilate the trash with your knife anyways, so really we're only concerned with damage to elites. One more thing of note is that for your toughness, you are losing a lot of toughness going to aughilds, such that you can probably be concerned with dying to things like electrified. Things that might not otherwise kill you in Crimson will kill you in aughilds. Notably, you still died to grotesques in any of these sets, and you still die to like just face tanking a whole lot of electrified in Crimson. You might not die to face tanking a whole lot of electrified in Guardian because of St. Archie's, but things like shock towers, things like grotesques, things like noxious Guardian stacks, they're all going to be pretty deadly still, regardless of if you go Crimson or aughilds. You might be able to survive some more electrified ticks in Guardian set, and you'll definitely keep your Scourge up more because of the way that St. Archie's works. But we're going to go and give us 1,000 Paragon now. I've already done this before for all the numbers, but I'd like to show it to make sure I didn't mess up any of the numbers. I will be putting the D3 planners to each of these sets in the description, and I think they'll all be put in as the 800 version, so you can come in and change the paragon to whatever paragon you are if you wanted to see what that's like. Okay, so now all of our paragon is set up. We can look at these numbers, and we get 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5. That should be reflected here. 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5. So now you'll see gaining 200 Paragon gives us about 4.20% damage on Guardian. And then on Crimson, gaining that 200 Paragon gave us 7.09% Paragon, or damage, sorry. So now we can see why Crimson starts to pull ahead. And Crimson and Allguild, for that matter, is because as you gain Paragon, you're going to be increasing your dexterity, but your dexterity was already a high number in Guardian, and so as you gain more Paragon, that number starts to get washed more and more, and compared to Guardian at 1k, Crimson does 3.46% more damage. This number is only going to continue to increase. And then these numbers will stay the same. 4.44% versus Crimson. That's if you go to aughilds. I don't think there's that much of a distinction between Crimson versus aughilds. I think that Crimson's probably easier to play because you are a lot tougher, and aughilds, you're really focused on getting those elites down, and you deal bit less damage to trash. I'd say significantly less damage to trash, but again, the trash will die. It has a lot less health. So let's go into our 2k scenario and know that if you go 3k, 4k, these trends continue. If anything, they get exacerbated. That's going up to 2k. This guy's going up to 2k. And the Guardian's going up to 2k. One thing that's asked a lot is why do we run Ingam? And it's because Ingam, the base damage here, is a lot higher. So 1901 to 2565 versus Carly's, which is 1619 to 2223. So higher base damage. If we look at our calculation for Impale, one of the primary things it's going off of in that formula section is the weapon damage, and then it multiplies by a bunch of stuff. So increasing your weapon damage is very valuable. That's part of why I think Crimson is the best set, personally. But let's go back to our numbers. That's the wrong notepad. Go back to our numbers. Here we see we gained 1,000 Paragon. Guardian went up 11.36%, which seems nice, until you compare it to how much Crimson and Aughild went up, which is 33.13%. So you're gaining a lot more damage in Crimson and aughilds as you go up in Paragon, and you cannot keep up in the Guardian set. Your toughness stays winning, but I don't think that's worth the damage trade-off. So ultimately, Crimson is better than Guardian, for sure. Aughilds might be better than Crimson. I still think Crimson is the best set, but I think it's debatable whether you go Crimson or you go Aughilds. But you almost certainly want to get out of Guardian as fast as possible. One thing to note is that this gear is augged with 125 augments. In all of the sets, they're all augged for 125 on all of the pieces. And also the gear is unreasonably good, but it's unreasonably good across all of the sets. Guardian will be better when you're not augged, but you shouldn't be unaugged for very long. I'd say even by 800 Paragon, you're probably going to have some augs, and every aug you get, since augs are not increased by the Guardian set, it's just going to fall further and further behind. So the takeaway from the video is get out of Guardian, go to Crimson, and if you don't want to go to Crimson for some reason, go to aughilds. I would suggest going to Crimson because, again, you're tougher, you can tank some electrified. You're still going to die to grotesques. You might not die to shock tower. If you're worried about your toughness because you want to keep your pools or something, you can drop your Bane of the Powerful for a Taeguk. That'll give you a lot more defense. And I'll put all the planners in the description so that you can poke around. You can look at all the rolls and see that I have cooldown rolled on my Holy Point here for my Crimson when that maybe should be Impale. I have Impale here and not cooldown. Notably, both aughilds and Guardian I have set up to have a 97% uptime on Vengeance, which means you have a 0.5 second downtime, so you're going to want to time your displacement so you don't get bopped during your downtime. And Crimson should have 100% uptime if you're killing elites. Overall, that's all I wanted to say. Switch to Crimson. Crimson is the best set for Spin Pale. Don't stay with Guardian. And overall, have a nice day.